Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you guys are joining from. My name is Piyush Malik. On behalf of American Society of Engineers of Indian Origin, I welcome you all to our Women's Special. Today, we are specially celebrating our women of ASEI and all the allies. Today happens to be the day that we are observing International Women's Day, but March is the International Women's Month that we celebrate here. And hopefully, all of you got a chance to look at what all ASEI has done in the past year. Now, I want to give you a little bit history about ASEI and the 5 key initiatives that we run. So ASEI is an organization of scientists and engineers and technologists. It's a 40-year-old organization. This year, we are celebrating our 40th year. And happy to say that we have grown by leaps and bounds. We have multiple chapters, and we strive towards providing opportunities for youth, for their internships, for their jobs, and provide mentoring. So we have these key initiatives that you see: Mentor Connect, University Connect, Youth Technology STEM initiatives, and Corporate Connect. These are 4 of our initiatives. And today, as part of our Getting Real with Engineering series of webinars, our Women's Special webinar is happening today. I want to say a few words about the International Women's Day and why it is celebrated. The United Nations declared March 8th every year as International Women's Day. And we at ASEI, as you heard me say earlier, we celebrate it throughout March every year. And in fact, the tradition has been continuing for so long. And just last weekend in Michigan, where Vatsala was moderating a panel along with 3 other ASEI women. So all our chapters celebrate women, and we are very appreciative of the fact that now, through our efforts, sustained efforts, we have grown from 0 to almost 35% women on each of our chapter boards. And it's come through a few initiatives and through a number of years. But let me focus back on the women in general and what's happening in the world. If you look at the world today, without question, the progress towards gender equality is extremely slow, if not retrogressive. Consider the countries in Middle East, Iran and Afghanistan of 1950s. They afforded more freedom than 2023 to their women, from dressing up to education. Now, this is the unfortunate reality, especially in corporations, communities, and nations that are still quite oblivious to the fact that the role of women in the household, corporate leadership, and government, and the transformation of the nation are as critical as that of men. At this ASEI Women's Month celebration, we recognize that gender equality should be a critical aspect of the corporate strategy of any organization, a standing topic in the development of national policies as well. Not making reasonable and remarkable efforts to achieve gender equality hurts everything else, including the bottom line, which executives are so concerned with in organizations. In a recent message to by the United Nations Secretary General, he indicated that progress towards gender equality is vanishing before our eyes and may take up to 300 years to achieve. Now, let that sink in, coming from the United Nations Secretary General. So, in addition to increasing rates of maternal mortality, forcing girls into early marriage, and the kidnapping and assaulting of girls for attending school in some parts of the world, there is still a significant salary gap between men and women in workplaces, coupled with systemic barriers against their career advancement. While we continue to work towards a generation that wouldn't require special days and months to value, respect, appreciate, and celebrate groups of people, this is the unfortunate reality of today. and women continue to be subjected to abuses of all sorts because of their gender. And this systematic discrimination, whether it is in corporates, whether it is in nonprofits, we've got to stop it. And it's the male allies who can come forward and do it. And while all of this is happening and women are at the brunt of wild jokes, insensitive talks, and disrespectful situations, the experience is even worse if the person is Black, brown, person of color, and a woman. So this should not be so. And therefore, we should all come together and stand up for the rights of women in the United States and worldwide, especially in those parts of the world where they continue to be suppressed. In our Indian tradition, we say, Janani Janma Bhumi Swargatapi Gariyasi, which in Sanskrit, from Sanskrit translated to English, means we respect women. And like our motherland, we respect women. So with my folded hands, I welcome you all, and especially to all the three powerhouses of women who are on stage here, and all those, including Vatsala, Lalita, and all those women who came to ASEI before me. I want to salute you all. And with that, let me kick off this wonderful session, which will be moderated by Surbhi Paul. Surbhi Paul is a board member at ASEI Silicon Valley, and she would be the moderator for today. So with that, Surbhi, please take it away.
Well, thank you so much, Piyush, for that lovely kickoff. Hi, everyone. It's a beautiful Saturday morning from where I'm sitting. And, what a great thing to kick this off by a male ally like yourself, Piyush. And we need more male advocates like yourself. And we will talk about that in our segment. So thanks for your time. Thanks for spending your Saturday morning 1 hour with us. So a little bit about myself, and I'll keep it short. I began my career journey, once I finished my master's in computer science with Cisco. I always refer Cisco as my bread and butter company because I was there the longest, and I have learned a lot, during my tenure at Cisco. And after Cisco, my first startup experience was at Arista in product management, and then I've been in the Valley for over 2 decades, and with around 17 to 18 years of experience in companies like EMC, with my first taste of storage industry. And then I hopped on to cybersecurity, VMware, and now I am at Portworx by Pure Storage. I lead the product marketing there. And along my whole career journey, I have spanned across various roles, starting from software QA engineering to technical marketing and being a product management leader and now product marketing leader. And I have a long way to go. I have learned a lot from my both men and women peers. So that's a short intro about myself. Surbhi, she's my namesake. She's Surbhi Kaul, I'm Surbhi Paul. So Surbhi, would you please go through your career journey? Let's get through the introductions. Why don't you introduce yourself?
Sure. Thank you, Surbhi. And it's such a pleasure to be here on this platform with you other women, talking about women's issues. And like you said, great kickoff by Piyush. I'm also a member of ASEI, board member, and I've been involved for a long time. Huge respect for what is done by ASEI. Let me give a quick introduction about myself. Like you, Surbhi, I have done an undergrad and master's in engineering. I did my undergrad from IIT Kanpur. And then right after I came to the US to do my master's at Texas A&M, where I did a computer science degree. And then I also, in the recent past, got an exec MBA from Harvard. So those are my college learnings. But beyond that, there have been learnings throughout my journey at each of my jobs. I have been working in the Bay Area for almost 25 years. And I started my journey at HP and then very quickly moved to Cisco. And I would say that a lot of my learning, my technical hands-on skills did grow the most at Cisco, beyond which I did go and do some gigs in B2C companies. I moved into the consumer world. I went to Netflix, then I spent time at Force 10 Networks, which was going back to networking, and went to Google. So you can see in my trajectory, I went a lot between B2B and B2C and kept switching back and forth. And I think Google was my longest gig. I spent almost 10 years at Google. And then I moved into product management, from being very technical hands-on into product management. Transformation was something I'll talk about and share with all of you in the coming session. And then about 3 years ago, I moved to Juniper Networks, going back to my roots of networking and utilizing a lot of B2C skills that I've acquired along the way, and figuring out how enterprises need to transform into more of customer-centric thinking than just building, very heavily technical, technology-focused products. So that's a little bit about myself, and of course, we'll talk a lot more. And I'll turn it back to you, Surbhi, to introduce our next speaker.
Yeah, thank you, Surbhi. That's awesome. We have Becky. Becky, I will let you introduce yourself and your career journey so far.
All right. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Thanks, Surbhi. So as I'm here, I'm just excited to be a part of this panel, to be alongside with renowned women, like both the Surbhis here, I guess, powerhouses that I'm going to be talking along with. So my career journey has been a little slightly different in the context of how it's even represented here. I just wanted to kind of showcase the different domain areas that I worked in and different types of companies. While you might see on the right-hand side, my longest gig has been more with Bank of America, which I'll elaborate as we go into the session itself. But really started my journey more, I would say, traditionally from a programmer, a developer, into kind of eventually taking on management roles. I went to school more for computer science and engineering, and also have more of an MBA with an information systems background. And much of what I've actually done personally, for me, it's about trying to learn in every job that you're a part of. And what I usually try to emphasize is the learnings that have brought forth over the years that has actually helped me evolve in my roles. It's the curiosity that helps me grow, as well as take on new and different roles. And even as you see on this chart, within Bank of America, I've been with the company about 15 years. And actually out of that, about 3 of them has been in consulting. I originally joined them as a consultant and then learned to kind of, eventually take on a full-time role. But the way how I've represented it here is just to showcase, even in those 15 years, it's just not been one job or a couple of jobs. It's more about trying to see what you can do differently, even being within a certain company and being such a large company. It's given me a lot of opportunities to try different things. And also what I do like to try and do is every couple of years or every few years, really try to go into an area that's completely new. So that's pretty much what I will be elaborating on. I do have, as I had mentioned, an applications background, and that's kind of currently what I'm working on, is actually leading their cash servicing technology as well as their merchant operations technology. These are two product areas within the company. So think about anything cash of the company kind of flows through our systems, as well as anything that you're doing as onboarding and fulfillment. I also lead the cyber resilience efforts for some of the critical services at the bank currently. So that's my background. I'll elaborate more on that journey as we talk through the panel itself.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Becky. Well, I hope, introducing ourselves and giving some background of it will put some context to the rest of the discussion that we plan to have here. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And, I would like us to take this time to reflect on your own experience, Surbhi and Becky, as a woman in technology, right? You've had incredible opportunities to advance your career and learn, from your outstanding peers, And I'm sure it was never easy, right? There are some challenges which are unavoidable, but then there are others which must be tackled head on for those, who come after us. And we are all mothers too. And we work daily to ensure that our kids inherit a more equitable and just world that we live in today. And if I mean, just examining where the society falls short is very critical to for that continuous growth and progress, right? And we must call out gaps. We should not be shy away from that in gender parity, like Piyush was mentioning earlier, and the opportunities for improvement wherever they exist, whichever sector they exist, right? Now, the International Women's Day, the community has for this month chosen the theme of equity as a focus this year, right? And there is a differentiation that's very critical between equality and equity to understanding how to correct the current disparity, right? Equality is based on the belief that all the people should have the same opportunities for a happy life, according to International Women's Day community. And equity is more holistic, right? In that it acknowledges that people don't begin life in the same place, and that circumstances can make it more difficult for people to achieve the same goals. And in those difficult circumstances where, for example, in some situations, because of a personal reason, if a woman has to step down from, say, a director level to a manager level, she does not have to be apologetic about that in front of anyone. The idea is that I firmly believe that our differences should be recognized and respected for a more fair-minded society. And equity does just that, right? It recognizes that each person has different circumstances and allocates the exact resources and opportunities to reach an equal outcome, right? So let me start with you, Surbhi. What has you have just talked about what your professional journey has been like, but would you like to talk about some of the challenges you faced or you face still as a woman in tech growing into the leadership role?
Sure, Surbhi. I think you put it really well, some of the challenges that we are facing. And, first we have been trying to establish some equality, level set that, and then from there go towards how do we get even more equity and understanding our differences, and yet figuring out how the way to, level the playing field. So I will share a little bit about my journey. Like I said, I got my undergrad from IIT Kanpur, and I think that's where I first got the direct impact of being a minority in the environment, where in a batch of about 350 boys, we were 8 girls. And our batch had actually broken the record of the previous several years, because 3, 4, 5 women was common every year. And here we were 8 of us, great for us. But for us, like, are you like kidding me? This is what we should be celebrating, that we're 8 women. And in most of the engineering disciplines, the first 2 are the core years, but then you go into your own discipline. And most of us are alone. So we struggled, or we had to work harder than the boys, because boys could collaborate, work on assignments together, study for quizzes together, whereas we women living in the girls' hostel are by ourselves. So immediately you start feeling the difference. You come to the classroom where professors and teachers are very much used to talking to a certain style of students in a certain way, and you feel the difference. You feel kind of you're on the outskirts. You're not belonging, right? So that feeling of belonging, you very quickly realize that I'm different, I don't belong. And when you get those feelings, it's very hard to participate, to raise your hand and speak, because you don't have your clan to support you. And then I came here to do my master's in the US, and I felt a little better that, okay, they're more in the school at Texas A&M. There were large populace of women, but not necessarily in the engineering side. But still, that gave me some comfort. There were research students, women, and there were, faculty who were women. So that itself was a beautiful change. However, I continue to see that in technology, women are not as interested and not as encouraged either. And then again, the classroom setting and the teaching style makes you not feel included. And from there, I came to the Bay Area. Again, a step up in the culture and the environment. But whenever you get, and in the last 20 years, I've seen this continue, you get into a tech company and you feel that most of the times, and I'm sure both of you have felt this too, you are the only woman in the room. And you again feel the same thing, that men are used to doing things a certain way, engaging a certain way, talking about sports and whatever, which we may not feel. So a lot of times this came up in, I lead some IND initiatives here at Juniper, and it came up that men always, before the meeting, are talking about sports and other things that are of interest. And women feel like they're okay sitting on the sidelines waiting for the meeting to start because, not all of them, but most of them may not chime in. Whereas we women, when we are talking about womanly things, like let's say we're talking about, I don't know, hair products, whatever, when other people join, we will quiet down that, oh, this is a topic that may not interest the larger population. So that mindset really sets us apart from even before work has started. So I have noticed that all along. So when I lead, and I'll talk about some of the IND initiatives and how you have to think about not just hiring, and then having more women in the pipeline, but then you have to create environments where they feel safe, they can contribute, they can engage, they feel welcome, they don't feel isolated and sitting. And that goes for not just women, but all minorities. And just like you said, Surbhi, it's not about just bringing equality. It's about understanding that we are all different, coming from different backgrounds, different voices, different way of thinking. And how do we create environments where everybody feels welcomed and respected and feels like they have a voice that they can chime in and share their point of view? So those are the set of challenges that I see around me. And then we'll talk a little bit about, how and what we can do as women, as leaders, to mitigate some of those and then build a better future for our next generations.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of your points are really bang on, what you said about before the meeting starts and the level of engagement. You're very right. I think we have all experienced that. And somewhere we got to work on breaking those kind of barriers. Becky, in your journey, Surbhi mentioned about diversity, equity, and inclusiveness, right? So in your journey as a woman leader, what has your experience been in bringing, diversity and inclusiveness in the organizations that you have worked at or you are working at? Like, please share some of your challenges and how you overcome those.
So I'll probably kind of backtrack a little into my background from a childhood perspective. So I'm the first of two girls in our family. There's no boys in the family, meaning, my parents literally, it was just the two of us. And so, honestly speaking, coming from more of the Indian culture, I mean, you kind of tend to, have a little upper hand if you have a boy in the family. And my dad's side of the family was very much that way. And so every time, my parents always kind of told us that, hey, you're no less than anybody else. And that's kind of how they've brought us up to really face the world in the context of, not necessarily providing that, I would say differences. It's providing that true equality at home as well as equity, because my parents gave us the exact same pedestal that, they could have given for a boy in the family. And so I grew up outside of India. You might think, hey, growing outside of India, why would you have been impacted? But it's more about, the relatives and others that come into the family that actually have that other mindset, which is not shared by your own parents. So the reason why I wanted to mention that was that helped to carve my diverse thoughts. That helped to carve my way of thinking on how I should view other people. My vantage point was completely different than another person who might not have been given that opportunity or who might be looking at life a very different way. And so when I came to America, I mean, basically I grew up in Africa for the most of my life. And then I went to India for my engineering. And when I went to India for my engineering, after you finish your engineering, it's about, hey, mostly, as I said, it was more about, should we send her for a higher education or should we just get her married? And honestly, and personally for me, it was, I really wanted to be independent. I had kind of been taught to be independent in most things, and I wanted to showcase that's really what I wanted to really be, for me personally. And so I told my dad, I said, I really just want to go and get a master's. I really want to be able to showcase what I can do. I just don't want to get married. And my dad and my mom were very supportive. And so when I came to America, I actually went to a school where there were very minimal diversity, honestly, because I wanted to kind of learn what it is to be truly independent and kind of carve a name for yourself. And so it really helped me a lot in terms of facing my fears. It helped me to kind of really understand, what do you do on your own when you're kind of left in pretty much an island where you have to kind of, stand up for yourself. So all of the reason why I say all of that is just based on, that kind of carved my journey in terms of what I do from a work perspective. I really reach out to women where I feel like they're not able to stand up for themselves, where they're not able to face their fears. From a DEI perspective, even for the company that I work for, I'm kind of proud to say that they lead from the top. I mean, our CEO is kind of involved in really the DEI board. He's kind of the head of the board, actually, and helps drive much of that in terms of women in tech, lead for women. There's a lot of internal networking organizations internally for us to build some of that within the organization. And as a matter of fact, I lead the Asian Leadership Network, which is about 1,400 members in the North Texas area. And it's also about being intentional about the differences that actually is the strength in what we bring to the table, right? So really looking at all of the ways how you as a person, and for me personally, it's like, how can I be a trusted advocate for someone to be able to have them come talk to me about what they are really looking for, and really helping them in their career journey and what people have done for me along the way as well. So it's definitely a lot different in terms of, background and differences, but that's really what I try to bring to the table to be able to help others in their journeys as I progress in mine as well.
Oh, that's great, Becky. And I think we need more of, like you mentioned, you have male allies who are on the top driving this. We definitely need more women leaders like yourself and Surbhi, and more male allies like that. Let's talk about the work-life synergy, right? Because I think everything that we're talking about is a lot on, we are often the primary caregivers in the family as well. So let's talk about the work-life synergy in tech, right? It is challenging, right? Especially for roles which require heavy travel or non-standard office hours, right? And on top of our professional responsibilities, like I mentioned, right, women are often the primary caregivers. They're running households, and that can be and is an enormous burden on top of the professional responsibilities that we have. That equals to stress for me, right? And how is this added stress recognized, right? I can tell you that, I mean, there have been women leaders in my career who have groomed me, mentored me, and I came to know at a very at a younger age that you need a woman to excel in her career, which means to grow up the ladder and be in the leadership role. She needs a village of people, or that support system to get her to that level. I have not seen a man talking about the same, because I think that village for a man is the partner, the woman herself. So how do you, Surbhi, we can start with you. How do you think that this added stress is recognized? What should be done, and what has your experience been like in bringing that work-life synergy?
Yeah, I think that's a great area for women to discuss and understand what can be done, what have other women done, how have they been successful. And I was recalling a lecture I heard, or not a lecture, a talk by Indra Nui, CEO of Pepsi. And she talks about, she said, women cannot have it all, right? It's, this is a myth when they say, oh, you can have it all. It's not. You have to balance, and you have to give some and get some. And it's hard when the world has been telling you, oh, you have to do both and you have to do perfectly. So what I share with women that I mentor and what I created, the space I created for myself and how I managed it, is by knowing that you cannot be perfect in everything. You cannot. You cannot be 100% there for the kids. You cannot be 100% in the job unless you create that plan and you create ways to balance everything out. So it could be, we lean on our parents, we lean on our nannies, we lean on our spouses, whoever is in that plan for you, you have to lean on. In my personal journey, I did take a couple of years break after I had my second kid. And after that break, coming back was very hard. And I have had this conversation with many women that what's an alternative, right? So if you don't take breaks and you try to balance it all, Surbhi, you're absolutely right. It's very stressful. So you have to figure out, you will have to have tools and mechanisms to balance everything. So one thing I learned a little bit later after I came back into the workforce again, I had to kind of start from the bottom of the ladder again. So that put me back. But I also started being very cognizant that I do not want to take on roles initially where I would need to travel. That's, again, a personal decision I made. So I took a break. I do want to say that women who want to take a break shouldn't shy away from it. If you can balance, absolutely do it. If you want to take a break, don't hesitate, because sometimes it is too much. So if you need to take a break, know that you will have a way to come back. And I want to encourage companies and leaders to know that a woman can take a break and still come back and be a meaningful contributor to the workforce. So if we create that room for women, they will not hesitate taking a break if the stress level was getting too high. So when I came back from that break, I made conscious choices that, I will not travel, I'll do certain kind of roles. I created those balance mechanisms for myself. And then I also managed my calendaring and my life very meticulously, putting everything on the calendar so I won't drop the balls. However, still also being compassionate towards yourself, that there will be times that you will drop the ball. And be kind and forgiving to yourself first before you expect others around you to be compassionate to you. So one of the things I tell every woman I meet, whether it's a kid at school or a young professional or even a leader, is that be compassionate. Don't try to be perfect. We women have this innate desire of perfection. I don't know if it's necessarily the societal pressure or training, or if it's something inherently. I see it. I have a girl and a boy, and I see my daughter being more driving towards that perfectionist attitude. And I do want to say to every woman, don't be. There is a study done that if there is a job opening, if men meet 70 to 80% of the requirements, they will apply. But women, unless they meet 100% of those requirements, they will hesitate. And that's a blocker for us because we want to be perfect. And so one thing I said, organize yourself really well. Second, be kind to yourself. Third, if you drop the ball, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. Do the best you can. That's it. And that's one way to keep your stress level low, right? We are also, one last thing, we are also taught to be like this, tough personality that don't be vulnerable. It's okay. You made a mistake, admit it, acknowledge it, that I have a lot on my plate. Maybe I need to take a few weeks off, or maybe I need to pass on some project to somebody else. And leaders and companies have to understand that, realize that, and support that.
So. Yeah, this is yes. And I hope, this message, and there are a lot of such International Women's Month panels that have been organized. I hope that this message goes across. And there are a lot of other genders, especially men, who watch this. And there are a lot of learnings from this, right? I mean, in my past career, when I was at EMC, during my interview and everything, they asked me, is there something that you want more? And I said that, I would like is there a meditation room in the office? And they were like, we have never had such a request before. So they were kind enough to, and trust me, that room was used. It was used quite a bit then, and I think that's another way to bring your stress levels down. And it's not just for women. I think it's for everybody in the company, in the office. And yes, so Becky, what are there any tools or what is it that you would? I mean, is there something that you do in educating in your organizations, everybody alike, men and women, on how to bring that balance? And like Surbhi said, it's okay if you drop the balls.
Yeah, everything that Surbhi said is spot on. I mean, basically, that's really something that I should say should resonate with not just every woman, but with every man as well, because, no one's perfect. And that's kind of, I also have a daughter and a son. And I tell my daughter, I mean, you don't have to always be perfect. You just have to aim for excellence. If you're trying to aim for excellence, it'll get you there to where you really need to showcase what is the best in you. And so I like the term work-life rhythm, because the way how I look at life is that it's always up and down. Some days are better than others, but it's really kind of working to have a balance from that standpoint of a rhythm in terms of a musical way of looking at life, really. And also I follow what I personally kind of try to call my 5 Ps for me personally. And what that really stands for is, I always like to plan. Again, you can't plan everything in life, but for the parts that you can, it's really good to have some kind of, a quick cheat sheet to say, hey, this is really what you want to be doing. I kind of share that with my children as well. We have our mini Kanban boards at home, really for us to get our charts done on things that we just have to be responsible for, right? So it's not just about planning, it's also about proactive planning. So the other P in my plan, the 5 Ps is my being proactive. Really, it's not about waiting to react, but more trying to see where you can actually drive more of that proactive way of working. And then also just not having a plan for the sake of a plan, but also prioritizing that plan, really to be able to kind of understand what is really important for you. And as Surbhi said, I mean, you can't do everything. You have to be able to know exactly what is important, what is going to make that difference. And again, you don't have to kind of make it look like, you're touching every spot. It's more about trying to make that impact, even in that smallest of things that you're actually being a part of. And then my 4th P is about being persistent, really kind of trying to continually drive towards things. Sometimes when you don't hit the mark, hey, it's okay. It's okay to fail, because all of those are stepping stones for you to kind of, make yourself better. And the 5th is more about being punctual. I just personally like to kind of keep things punctual. And this is just something that I've learned from my grandpa as well as my mom, where they used to say it's better to be half an hour early than 1 minute late. So it's just about that punctuality that I try to kind of drive with my children. I use the divide and conquer mechanism, even within more from a work perspective, as well as from a home standpoint, on who can, help do it better. And that's where you lean on, mostly our supportive spouses, wherever possible, our children. I also kind of engage in what I call as caring one-on-ones at home. And what that really means is that it's really sitting down with your children and helping them understand what your life really calls for from a work perspective, right? Because it's also for them to understand, what do you really do in your job? As a matter of fact, I mean, it's funny, like my daughter was, I think, about 4 or 5 years of age, and someone came home and they asked, hey, do you know what your mom does? And she's like, oh yeah, she's in transformation. And they were like literally taken aback. They're like, what? And she had something to talk about it, because it was more about those one-on-ones that you can, share what you as a parent are doing, and also how much time that takes you away from doing maybe certain other things, but really be working to kind of balance that with them, right? So, because even explaining this Women International Month, what I tried to do with my daughter, I looked at analogies that you can kind of see on the internet, and many people talked about a bicycle, where you as a family, like we are a family of 4, we're all, if you're all given a bike, that's really kind of being equal. Basically, every one of you is given a bike to ride and kind of go to a place together. But we have not necessarily looked at the size of the bike or the comfort of the bike based on, the father, the mother, the children, but really just that, hey, everybody's equal, everyone's got a bike. But when you look at equity, it's more about understanding the needs of the child. My daughter's 11 years old. I mean, does she need an adult bike, or is it like 11-year-old bike? And it's kind of really looking at it from that lens. And that's really the lens of what I tried to share with her as well from a home standpoint. And it's about the same thing at work as well, really kind of working to work with women, helping them understand their fears and how they should start facing them in order for them to be able to stand out in meetings. It's about visibility is what I kind of try to emphasize to them. You can be doing all that and being the best at what you do, but unless you are vocal about it, unless you speak about it, no one's gonna know. Really, it's more about trying to communicate out there and showcasing the visibility that you can drive more forward to bring you as a woman in the workplace as well. And I mean, I get opportunities to talk about career at career days at school, and that's something that I work to emphasize. It's more about showcasing the work that you do for your children and the next generation, so they can kind of learn from it, and you can drive that mentality forward. So it's all of those mechanisms that I apply both in personal as well as my work life.
No, that's great. I mean, if I may add an R in your 5 Ps. Which is resilience. I think not trying to do any comparison, but then I think we have all experienced, not just professionally, and I think our male counterparts would definitely agree with that. I think women are like tea bags. Until they're put in hot water, you won't know their strength and their resilience. And everything that you mentioned about, and your bicycle analogy was spot on, and that's exactly what we're talking about, equity, right? Everybody's situations, like you mentioned, the needs are different, and to recognize that. Having said that, I wonder what can organizations do more, or our audience would like to know, you and Surbhi being in the leadership positions. What can the organizations do to make a positive difference, on the journey towards closing that gender parity? And I think it's the need of the hour. It's definitely something. It's a work in progress, right? But then we do need more and more of that, so that the young girls out there, or even women at any age who are starting their career journeys in tech, or they are towards making progress, they can benefit out of that. And instilling that confidence in women, like Becky, you mentioned that you have great ideas, but having that confidence to not shy away from putting that across the table, communicating, and having that confidence in your voice. So Surbhi, do you want to take on that? How do you think that that gender parity can be worked upon?
So I'm going to give you two aspects of where I see that we as leaders and we as organizations need to focus on, along with our corporations where we work. So in corporations where we work, I think it's very important to create that environment, like I was alluding to earlier. So we focus a lot on hiring more, right? Okay, let's get X number of women on the board. Let's get Y percentage of our leaders to be women. Let's ensure that our incoming people or incoming hiring is X percentage women. Now, that is all stats. But beyond that, you really have to create that environment where women feel welcome, they feel respected, they feel heard. And for that, there's several things and initiatives that companies can do. And I'm very happy to say that we are doing a lot of stuff that I'll talk about today at Juniper. Is you have to create groups or cohorts where people can come share ideas, discuss their challenges, and come up with plans and ideas to improve. So whether it's women's ERGs or other ERGs that support these minorities groups and looks at their set of challenges. A lot of times people or companies have not invested in ERGs. And when I was younger in my career, I was also not sure what do these groups provide. But as I have matured as a leader, I see the value of those. And I really respect companies that invest in creating those spaces for not just women, but other minorities, LGBTQ, other groups that have a place to go and share their concerns and then create a plan that hopefully can be supported and funded by their management and leaders to help them create that environment, right? So that would be step one. Beyond that, I think it's important to cultivate, not just mentors, but sponsors and allies within the company. And what I mean by that, you created the clan for us, let's say, to be heard amongst each other. But then we have to go and take that learning and share it with other parts of the company, because a lot of times it's not that, and several male leaders have said this to me, that it's not that they're not interested in supporting or being an ally. It's just that they need coaching as well, how to be an ally, how to be a sponsor. So if we set up programs that help these leaders become more aware, become more conscious, then we can create the culture. So those are the two things I would say companies can do. And then beyond that, when I was at Google, we did a lot of effort to, go to universities and talk about trying to get women in tech, right? And we realized that was too late. So we started going to high schools as part of that women's ERG that I was part of, Women in Tech, is let's get these, STEM programs in high schools. And then we realized that high school itself was too late, that cultivating the resilience that you talked about and the desire to be in tech and do math and science and STEM has to come from much earlier. So, hopefully all of us women are nurturing the younger generation that we are raising, but we have to build that awareness in schools as well, that in middle school, girls start shying away from tech or from math and science for some reason. Let's figure out the culture in schools and our society as well, along with doing this work downstream in companies. By then it might be too late, right?
Yeah, you're absolutely right, Surbhi. I mean, couple of things. My daughter, she's 15, and often when we talk about and she's all for both equality and equity, and she's very vocal about, whenever we touch base on these topics, she says that, Mom, there is still so much work that needs to be done because this patriarchy is so deep rooted that, it's in our everybody's subconsciousness. It's there. So there's a lot of work, and we need many more people to make such programs, bring up some tools, do some more work, towards it. At Pure Storage also, we have this mentor-mentee monthly meeting, right? There are these women who are picked to be part of those mentor-mentee, where they get coached by leaders in the company. But I hope, Surbhi, to your point, that the company, it's important to do these things, but at the same time, share these learnings or learn from these learnings and what comes out of those meetings, and do something about it. I think that the actions are more important as well. Becky, what's your take on this? What do you think that could be done, or anything different from what Surbhi said, in closing that, bridging that gap?
Yeah, I think as Surbhi said, many companies are working through programs to deal with unconscious bias, right? So when we talk about unconscious bias, it's not just about, a specific type of a difference, but even from a gender perspective, which is very evident in many areas. And so really kind of working through those programs and through women ERGs, as Surbhi mentioned, we have Women in Technology, we have Lead for Women, we have so many of those in ERGs that are part of many organizations. And if you don't have one at your organization, try to be the one that stems to kind of, starting something like that, because it really brings that community of women together to be able to, speak vocally, as I, really just more be out there in terms of saying, hey, this is my difference. This is really what I really want to put out there, and showcasing that equal representation that they can bring to the table. We do talk about hiring practices as well, as a lot of our organizations normally do. It really is looking into trying to get women into leadership roles, really kind of showcasing that they are able to be at par with anybody else, really, because we all come with, common education is how I put it. We all kind of go to very similar, programs as we go through our STEM programs at school, at colleges. And at the end of the day, it's more about women bringing their full selves, and in order for them to showcase what they can truly bring to the table. So really helping through career programs that we can help STEM women into leadership roles, into corporate boards. Those are some of the things that we work to emphasize on. But also there are a lot of women that I know we talked about, women who might not be in the workforce for a little bit, but trying to come back into the workforce, who feel really stuck. And many of those things is what I personally like to kind of take interest in, where I help women to be able to mentor them, to kind of help them understand what they can get into. It's not always about, kind of saying, hey, I've gone 2 years behind, and, the technology out there is so different out there. Well, whatever you've learned 2 years ago, it's still valid. I mean, it's not that things do change, but however you can kind of upskill yourself, you can definitely kind of reskill yourself, really looking at opportunities on where you can kind of, make that difference based on the pace that you can work with, because everybody is different. And, the motivational levels from one person to the other is very different. You are an individual that wants to make a difference for what makes sense for you. You're not living a life for somebody else. And that's kind of what I try to emphasize to women, where it's more about, there is differences, there's so many things that are out there, but you as an individual can make that difference wherever you're planted, in order for you to be able to showcase a light for the next generation. So that's the way how I look at it.
Yeah, completely on board with that. So and when we talk about equity, we do have to talk about our male colleagues or male allies who recognize, how vital it is to work on bridging the gap, especially in leadership roles, right? And I've had some great men allies who have been a force in helping me, not only push my boundaries, but have an equal voice across the table, right? I mean, I would, starting with my husband, I mean, he does not let me settle for less, even if it's, during my working, like when I'm working, or while I'm exploring new opportunities, he always says, know your worth. And I think, and I've had some great male allies in my previous companies, and even where I'm today at Portworx in Pure Storage. What are your thoughts on this, Becky and Surbhi?
Yeah, I can go first. In terms of, I think, more looking at my career journey, I've had the opportunity to be a part of an IT leadership program early on in my career. That kind of helped to almost create a more of a way of being able to interact with a lot of senior male leaders at that time. And I personally kind of got to see that there were not many women leaders at the top. And it was personal motivation for me to kind of see what is that difference and why aren't women really getting to that level. And so many of those leaders, I've had conversations with them on trying to carve out my journey. And many of them have been very much, to your point, allies to really support me in that journey, to kind of be more specific on, hey, this is what the corporate organization looks for. This is what really life calls for. This is how you need to strategically think about on how you need to lay a foundation for your career. So I've had many of those leaders that have actually helped me in my journey, just based on, again, the opportunities that life has presented for me as well, has been one of those that has helped me in that perspective. And what I personally try to do now is really help lay the foundations for others wherever it is possible, right? Really kind of helping to create that outer circle of trusted partners, as I call it. In networking, we kind of talk about that inner circle, which is the true trusted leaders, but there's also that outer circle that is beyond your company or beyond, maybe your immediate family, that actually helps you in that journey forward. And it's about showcasing your brand wherever you go. I mean, don't shy from really showcasing who you really are, because that's what people take a notice of. And that's kind of what creates opportunities for you in the future. Because early on in my career, I was not as vocal as I sound today. It was more about thinking that, my work will speak for itself. But it's also about showcasing what you really can bring to the table, and teaching others how to do it has been really one of those that has helped me in my journey.
And in the interest of time, I'm going to turn it over to Piyush. I see that Mayor Lily Mei has joined us, so I will give Piyush an opportunity to welcome her formally, and then we might take questions here.
Thank you, Surbhi and Surbhi Paul, Becky and Surbhi Kaul. You guys really had a great discussion. I was in the background listening to you, powerful women. But today, amongst us, we have one more powerful woman who happens to be from my home city. And all I say is, may the force be with you. F here stands for not only force, but Fremont. And here is my friend, Mayor Lily Mei from the beautiful city of Fremont. Lily, if you would like to say a few words, welcome.
Sure. I just wanted to say thank you so much for allowing me to join you. And I'm so proud I've heard the conversation. And as a mother of two MIFs made in Fremont, and my daughter is an engineer, I think it's so important. And I absolutely echo. I think it's very important that we start earlier on with resiliency and building the capacity and interest in elementary. That's why we have makerspace in our libraries. And I love doing Introduce a Girl to Engineering Day as well as with AEW. I also think it's so important. I heard when you talked about the Fs, I don't consider failure a bad thing. I think it's a way to learn. And we need to build that. And it's important also for so often for women to be able to talk to one another and support each other. And so I just wanted to thank ASEI and also your incredible panelists. I've been listening to the conversation from Surbhi as well as Becky, and that it's wonderful that you're highlighting this topic. I look forward to future ways that I could succeed, help support and succeed for your young women and next generation. I apologize. I've got a little bit of crazy background. I'm here in Pacific Grove for Civic Well policymakers discussion about green energy and summit in terms of some of our policies at the state level as well as locally, that what we can do regionally to ensure that. And so I also just want to have to give a small plug before I leave. We're doing for the first time in our city's history a Spring into STEAM program at the downtown event center. But we are always looking for ways to encourage our youth, whether it's through our youth commissioners or environmental sustainability. She's not on the discussion today, but I'm so proud of one of our youth too. If you ever want to look her up for our gray water policy discussion, I can Shreya Ramachandran. And so she's one of our students and who's been active in trying to drive that. So students in our future is so bright with females. And so thank you for your panel. Thank you for the discussion. I look forward to the questions and anything that we can do as a city of Fremont to help you move forward to a brighter future that's more female powered is something that I'd be happy to support. Have a wonderful, successful conference.
Thank you, Lily. And Mayor Lily Mei, he is an incredible friend and supporter of ASEI. She was the keynote at our CXO summit at the last convention, exactly a year back. So we hope to continue to partner with the City of Fremont. And I also want to recognize there are a bunch of ASEI board members on the call, besides the three women that you see here. Surbhi Paul and Surbhi Kaul are from Silicon Valley. Becky is our newest life member and newest board member from our newest chapter of Dallas. And we have Ashok Madanji from Southern California chapter. We have Ramanujam from our Michigan chapter. He is the vice president of ASEI National as well. And we have Srini Vemula, again, he's from Silicon Valley, but trying to drive the Seattle chapter as well. And we've got Sam and Puneet, who's the president of Dallas chapter. So we've got a bunch of these folks here, and there are a lot of questions from the audience as well. I know we have only 1 minute left, but before some folks who have to drop off, I want to say that we've got tremendous programs lined up. Today is March, middle of March. About a month back, we did a students recognition program in Silicon Valley face-to-face, and it was such a great program. And now we've got an event coming up on 21st in Southern California with Ashwin Rangan. He is going to be speaking. Then we have a teen woman who teenager who has started her own startup, Coder Bunnies, Samira Mehta, and she will be talking to us next month. We've got the students events happening in Washington, D.C. chapter. I wish Venkat was here. He would talk about those. One after another, we've done a lot of these things. And in fact, I want to recognize the Michigan chapter as well. They did the women's event last weekend. So we continue to celebrate youth, women, as well as promote science and technology. So those who can stay with us for a few more minutes, please join. Please stay here while Surbhi will be taking those audience questions. So thank you, Mayor Mei. If you have to leave, I understand. And thank you very much.
Thank you.
Take care. All right, Surbhi, Paul, there are some questions for, I think Ashok ji had put a question here. Let's take that.
All right. So can you talk about one current challenge in business or home life you're facing as women? Yeah, sure. I mean, I can, I can start with that. I think with at the business level or at the professional level, I think again, one challenge that I face is that to be able to have that authority to create such programs like Women ERG, like Surbhi and Becky mentioned, or what are those actionable things that we can get out to have to see that we are bridging the gap between the gender parity that we talked about. I think that's one challenge that I face currently, where everybody's aware of the situation, but I'm yet to see what is being done to bridge that gap. Really having more and more male allies in supporting your voice. And we have to make that extra effort. I mean, I think, there's an extra effort that needs to be done because the gap is huge. It's still huge. We have covered it, but it's still huge. And in my home life, again, we talked about the work-life synergy, or like Becky mentioned, work-life rhythm. I think that's an ongoing challenge, in my opinion. But then, like it's a sine curve. It comes up, and then you come up with certain measures to overcome that. But it's an ongoing challenge. You have to run around to pick up kids. You have to be in that one critical meeting that happens right at that moment, and your video needs to be on. So that's from my side. What about you, Surbhi?
I'll just make quickly 2 points, and then I apologize, I'll have to drop off. But I think one of the big challenges I see is the innate culture in tech companies. And despite the initiatives that we have in place, turning them into actionable where it can really percolate throughout the company culture, that is going to take time. It's not, Becky, you were talking about transformation. I think the hardest transformational initiatives are cultural initiatives. So I would hope to see a future by the time the next generation is ready that we have made that shift. But we have a long ways to go. So that is the one big challenge I see. And one more thing I would say, women not self-promoting is the other challenge I see. And there was, again, a big study done in Google where, 90% of the time, you have the opportunity to self-promote at Google, right? Most of the time, men, even, if they meet, like I said, the bar, to certain percentage, they start applying for promotion, and women really hold back. And they don't have, you talked about that the confidence level to be able to say, I'm ready for a promo. And most of the time, their managers have to put them up. So if managers are not aware of that kind of, psychology or that kind of mentality, then they may not realize that, I have just been promoting men in my teams because I did not realize that these women did not self-promote, does not raise their hand. So, I put the burden a little bit on the women as well, that we have to help these women to speak up more, raise their hand more, and come forward more. So cultural and women's own mentality to be able to move up there. Those are the 2 things. And with that, I apologize, but I need to take off. And it was such a pleasure being here. I might take other questions. Thank you, Surbhi, and great to be on the panel with you all. Thank you, Piyush.
Thank you, Surbhi. And Surbhi Paul, let's try to wrap it up. There are a bunch of questions that came from pre-registration. I want to read one question. How women in mid-level position can make a foray into leadership roles? I think Becky would be good to take that question.
Sure. So what I would say is you don't have to be in a leadership role to make a difference. That's one thing that I always tell women. I say, in any role that you play, try to be really good at what you do, contribute into making that bigger impact. Always understand the bigger picture, because I always feel like many a times when I work with certain folks, it's more about just understanding their job and getting it done. It's always understanding the bigger picture, understanding the why as to why are you doing what you're doing in order for you to be able to drive that bigger impact, right? But again, that doesn't mean that you want to limit yourself saying, hey, that's leadership positions and not for women. So what I would say is that it's more about to what Surbhi, Kaul was mentioning. Self-promotion is very, very important. Many times I think leaders don't understand that. When I say leaders in general, they don't understand that there are people within their organizations that want to take on leadership roles because you never talk about it. You never are kind of speaking out and saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for. Early on in my career, I did have really good sponsors who were men who actually told me very specifically on be intentional about your conversations on what you're looking for and be prescriptive at certain points of time as well. So it's not about like today I'm a technology executive. This was a journey of honestly the last 12 years for me. When I had my first sponsor at the company as a part of a diverse employee sponsor program, my first conversation was my goal is to become a technology executive at a certain point, and I would like to own certain products at the company. And it was really kind of helping to explain. And he said, have you shared this with anyone? It was more about, hey, I at that point in time, I was still a technology delivery manager. And my thought was, hey, this is a long way ahead of me. But what he said was, you need to start laying that foundation to be able to eventually get there. And you need to kind of take on a lot of lateral roles to work to understand the broader organization for you to be able to do that. Because when you get to a technology executive role, you're really doing things end to end. You're really kind of right from start to finish for any initiative. It could be, things that you're supporting from a base perspective. All of that has to be, comprehensive, and people have to trust you for what you do, right? So it's really building that over time. So as a leader today, I can tell you, it is a journey. It's not something that's a switch that kind of, turns itself on the next day you're a leader in the organization, but it's the journey of the foundation that you lay intentionally to help you get there. And that's basically kind of talking to people, creating that broader circle or a broader network. I mean, we have the current organization that I work with is over 200,000 people. And in large organizations like that, you need to have that broader networks, and it could be through ERGs. It could be through just creating that mentoring type of a network circle that will help you in your career.
Great. Thank you, Becky. And just to close it up, Surbhi, did you have any last words to close this panel?
Well, yes. I mean, it was awesome. It has been an awesome experience. And I just want to thank everybody for registering for this, for listening in. I want to thank Mayor Lily as well for taking out her precious time and be a part of this panel. I think that was the icing on the cake. Thanks, Piyush.
Wonderful. Thank you, all the panelists. And as I said in the beginning, ASEI will continue to do a lot of things this year. This is our 40th year. And I want to close the panel again with one statement that I made earlier. Janani Janma Bhumi Swargatapi Gariyesi, and we respect and welcome all the women to join us in ASEI mission and all the male allies to help them elevate and get them to their position that they deserve in society. So with that, thank you very much for joining, and we'll see you in our next